Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Weekly Tips and Tactics. This week has been a big week. We've talked about a lot of deep things. So hopefully you've been paying attention all along because honestly, it is time that we identify and describe our emotions effectively, purposefully, productively, proactively, whatever that looks like for you. And it definitely depends upon the situation, right? I've had a lot of good back and forth conversations with a lot of you. So here's what we know. There are two kinds of emotions or emotional experiences, if you will. There are our reactions to events, things that are going on inside of our environment. And then there are those inner reactions. And these are primarily those reactions that we have to our own thoughts. Okay, so those are two very important things. If you need to, push pause and rewind and write those down because they're important. Because it helps us identify or answer the questions, these very important questions. How have my emotions acted in my life? How have they acted? Was it helpful or was it hurtful? It is honestly important that you ask yourself, how do I interpret events? Because a lot of times we interpret events as we are internalizing them. So, or we interpret them from an internal space. So we might hear somebody's words as attacking or downgrading or critical, but that's because we're being critical of ourselves and it had nothing to do with that other person. So we have to understand, how are we interpreting these events and what is prompting the emotion? And then we have to look at our urges to act. Where's that coming from? And what does that action really stand for? Is the act of impulsively, I don't know, eating a bucket of brownies, is that, what is the purpose for that? What is the why? Is this action a self-soothing tactic that I use? Or is it, what kind of a comfort does this bring to me? And there are other urges to act, right? We know these things. There's fight or flight. And is that out of anger or fear or what, right? So some of those we have to really take a look at and notice what those urges are, where they come from. Is it anger, fear, sadness, shame, disgust, surprise? What is it, right? You have to be willing to ask yourself the question. And then you have to ask, what are the after effects, or what are your after effects? So say to yourself, what are my after effects? If I ate a bucket of brownies and the purpose was to soothe myself, what's the after effect? Is it self-loathing? Right? What does my internal dialogue sound like afterwards? So we have to be able to go through these things and so that we can really move through our emotions effectively. And you might be saying, what does that have to do with identifying and describing our emotions? Well, if we're not asking ourselves the right questions, if we're not investigating the right thing, then we're not going to get to the bottom of what a true emotion is. If we are answering the question, how are you, with the word fine, that's super ambiguous. The word fine is a very ambiguous word because it can be anything from a overly bleached fine strand of hair to a very fine stone, like a solid gem that comes from the earth that is super strong and precious, right? So the word fine doesn't describe your emotion. It doesn't even describe how you are, because unless you back it with a definition that fits how you are, right? So we want to be very specific. And in today's world, I think we are too broad brush. We're just broad brushing things, and we're not really looking at how are you really. So those are the tips that I have for you today. Again, hopefully you've been paying attention all week because we've been talking about this topic, and it's very important. Anyway, I look forward to chatting with you. We'll talk soon.